Good morning to everyone. Welcome to the Overnight Action Report here at MarketStream.live. My name is Joseph Cusick from the Cusick Group, securities offered by MoneyBlock. Here to give you your update, review, and your get up and go today for the markets. Well, we have global markets to the upside. We have yields up in the bonds, especially in Europe, and we'll get to that in a second. We also have global equities to the upside. So let's take a look at the action that happened over in Asia in the overnight session. Now, Japan, they came out and revised their third quarter GDP. They cut the growth reading in half, but that was not going to stop the Nikkei. The Nikkei finished up overnight 1.5%. And we're seeing levels that we haven't seen since the start of 2016 in the Nikkei. 9 sectors registered gains with, again, utilities up 4.2%. You had financials up 2.2% and industrials up 2.1%. And these were all sectors that were showing the most strength overnight in the Nikkei. We did see that healthcare was lagging, down 1.4%. And again, this was in the face of a revised third quarter GDP. They cut it in half. So very interesting action in Japan. EWJ, the Japanese ETF that trades here in the United States, went out at $50.52 last night. The weekly options are pricing in the potential for this ETF to still move up or down about 84 cents for the remainder of this week. So some decent movement in there in this $50 stock. Let's keep an eye on that. Vol is relatively cheap. For you new viewers, that just means that there's not a heightened expectation of big violent moves either up or down in EWJ. Now, taking a look at Hong Kong's Hang Seng, it added about 0.3%. You had property names finishing to the upside. China Overseas, Sino Land, all climbing between 1.4% and 2% overnight. Now, we did see on the downside some consumer names. We saw some entertainment names like Galaxy Entertainment and Sands China losing between 0.1% and 1.2%. Want to keep an eye on that. EWH is the ETF that you can track that tracks Hong Kongese stocks, and it went out last night at $20.97. The monthly options are pricing in the potential for this underlying for the next 8 days to move either up or down about 1.8% or about 41 cents. And again, vol is relatively inexpensive there, telling us that we shouldn't expect big violent moves, but they could. But right now, it's not being priced into the options market. Taking a look at the Chinese Shanghai Composite, shed about 0.2%. Now, there was some data out overnight. We talked about this last night on the closing bell. China showed that there was actually smaller than expected surplus. And they also saw, what was surprising though, from the data, was that they both imports, which popped 6.7%, and exports, which upticked about 0.1%, surpassed all expectations. They thought that imports were going to be a lot lower, and they thought that exports would be lower as well. And we saw an uptick in both of those. So we could see that maybe the Chinese economy, especially internally, is chugging along. We're going to keep an eye on that very closely. FXI is the Chinese large cap ETF. Finished last night at 37.26. We're going to watch this closely on the U.S. Open. The weekly options are pricing in the potential for FXI to move either up or down about 2.5% or around 92 cents. Now, taking a look finally at India's Sensex, that'll wrap up our view in Asia. Gained about 1.7%. There's been some broad-based strength for the last few sessions in India. You have two of the biggest components in the ETF I watch, Tata Steel and Tata Motors, both posting really big gains at 4.6% overnight and 3.6% respectively. You also have auto names like Baha Auto, Hero Motocorp, Suzuki, Reliance Industries, and also Sun Pharma, a pharma name that has been under scrutiny. The FDA came in, wrote up a big report on one of the facilities. These stocks are all up between 1.8% and 2.8%. That's driving the Indian markets right now. EPI is the ETF I watch. I'm going to watch that one closely on the open with the moves that we've seen so far. The ETF closed last night at $20.50. That's with the options that are expiring tomorrow, pricing in the potential for the stock to still move this week about 2.2% either up or down. That's about 55 cents. Vol's been a little bit more on the upside, above its 50-week, basically about 50%. So it's right in that mid-range to getting into that upper 2/3 range. Now, turning to Europe. We had some big news right before I came on this morning. The ECB did announce how they were going to continue their purchase program. They actually announced that they're going to taper. What does that mean? The program was basically they were buying 80 billion euros a month. They're going to continue that program through March as stated, right? But what they did say is that after the March extension, which is when everyone was expecting that's where the purchase program was going to stop, then they would expect some sort of extension of it. Well, they're going to extend it, but at a lower rate. They're going to taper down to 60 billion a month, and that really had the markets holding up. Here's why. If you do this simple math, if the program was going to end in March, and so the buying 80 billion, and let's say they extended it 6 months after March, that would get you basically through September. If you take 6 and multiply it times 80, that gives you 480 billion euros that they would put towards the purchases. If they extend it for the remainder of the year, in other words, 9 months, it's 60 billion. That gets you to 540 billion by the end of the year. So in other words, they're still infusing another 60 billion euros into the system with even the taper. So the markets have reacted positively in Europe. As a matter of fact, you can see almost every single European bond is up as far as yield's concerned between 6 and 13 basis points. Now, taking a look at the German DAX, it's trading up around 0.5%, and it has most of the market to the upside. Commerzbank, Deutsche Bank are up about 1.1% and 1.5%. You're also seeing heavyweights like Daimler, BMW, Volkswagen, all showing gains between 0.2% and 1.1%. Now, utilities are dragging with RWE down about 1.3%. And again, there's been some positive upside moves now post the ECB extension of their purchase program through the remainder of 2017. EWG closed last night at 2016, and the weekly options are pricing in the potential for the underlying to move either up or down about 2.3%. Or around 54 cents for the remainder of this week, next couple days. Taking a look at the UK and the FTSE, up by about 0.3% this morning post the ECB news that they are going to continue with the purchase program. It's just ratcheting it back a little bit. They have, in the UK, in the FTSE, the biggest upside catalysts have been from the miners and the consumer names. BHP Billiton, Rio Tinto, up between 1.6% and 2%. You also have Coca-Cola, HBC, Diageo, Sainsbury up between 0.9% and 2.4%. Financials are lagging, with Standard & Chartered, Prudential, and HSBC holding down between 1.1% and 1.9%. Let's see if that shifts now that we've seen what the ECB has done, and we're watching those yields start to increase. That could help these financial names that were down early in the session. EWU is the ETF that I track for the FTSE, and it went out last night at 31.09, and the options are pricing in right now the potential for the underlying to still move up or down about 2%. Now, taking a look at France, and the CAC climbed about 0.4% so far this morning. Steelmaker Mattel has spiked about 2.1%. You also see exporters like Renault and Peugeot hold pretty decent gains of 1.3% and 1.6%. Financials like BNP Paribas, Crédit Agricole, and Société Générale are all up between 0.2% and 0.8%. We did have some insurer names, most notable one, AXA, down about 1.1%, so that could be dragging on the market right now. EWQ, that's the ETF that tracks the CAC stocks, went out last night at 24.63. The monthly options are pricing in that are expiring in 9 days. The potential for the stock to move either up or down around 72 cents at this juncture. That's about a 4.5% move in this ETF. Finally, Italy. The MIB continues to move to the upside. They're added right now about 0.6%. Bank shares continue to lead to the upside after the no vote and on the referendum and the Prime Minister's resignation, Renzi's resignation, being accepted by the President of Italy. You see strength in BMPS, Banco Popular, UBI, Banca, all up between 1.6% and 6.3%. So with the recent news of the extension of the ECB purchase programs, it looks like the banks are really moving to the upside. As a matter of fact, out of all of the European bonds, the Italian bond yields are up the most so far this morning. So EWI closed last night at 23.79. That is the Italian ETF that I use to track Italian stocks and what's going on in the MIB. The options that are expiring on Friday are pricing in the potential for EWI to move either up or down about 3.2% for the remainder of this week. So we're going to keep an eye on there. Volatility is still up to the upside in that upper 2/3. So we could see some big moves either up or down in Italy. Right now, the upside is what is going on right now in the general markets. Join me at 9:30 Eastern Time in a little less than 45 minutes. I will be talking about the opening action here in the United States. We do have a firmer open right now. We have the major indices here in the United States in the pre-markets in the green. Let's see if that holds. We'll see you at 9:30 Eastern Time. Till then, have a great rest of the trading day.